guys, how are we all? Welcome back to the Twist the Bones podcast, where each week I sit down and I read and react to a bunch of spooky, scary, horrifying and weird stories that range from ghosts and the paranormal to real life encounters with creepy people or even potentially dangerous people. And just like usual, I just want to quickly go over some housekeeping things before I do get into this week's story, which I am very, very excited about, and I will tell you why in a second. But firstly, I will always credit the people who wrote these stories, so all the information will be in the description of each episode if you want to go and support those content creators. And finally, if you have your own story, so whether that be an encounter with a stalker, hint hint on today's story, or your own paranormal or supernatural experience, and you want it to feature in a future episode, please reach out and send your story over to me. I would absolutely love that. You can do that by either using the Facebook page, you can drop me a message, or I will start posting on there eventually and you can leave it in the comment section. It's completely up to you. And the Facebook page is just Twist the Bones podcast, or you can email your story over to me at twistthebonespod@gmail.com. Or finally, I have actually set up a Reddit page. I know that a few other YouTubers, podcasters, content creators have a Reddit page, and that sometimes is easier for people to post over there. So I've set up my own. I'm pretty sure it's just Twist the Bones podcast, but again, I will leave all that information down below if you want to leave me a story over there. And I suppose it's a good way for other people to react to your stories as well, comment on them, or even just read other people's before I can get around to reading them out. Yeah, I just thought I would start my own little subreddit there. I think it's a subreddit. I feel so old. I don't really know much about Reddit, but anyway, those are the different ways that you can leave me your story if you want it to be in a future episode. But apart from that, I'm going to get into this week's story, which I am so excited to read because this is actually a story I did find on Reddit, and it is a Let's Not Meet story. If you don't know what a Let's Not Meet story is, it's basically a story where you've had a bad experience with usually a person and it's about let's not meet again. And they're incredibly terrifying, mostly because these sorts of stories are real life experiences with real life people. And even though ghost stories can really freak you out, these are real life people. There is quite a danger to that sort of situation, and I love reading them. I find them fascinating, but they make me feel sick to my stomach because this can happen to anyone. And sadly, it does happen a lot more than you would think. So I reached out to the person who had wrote this on Reddit and said, would you mind if I read this in my podcast? And they were very, very kind and said I could. So thank you so much to this person. But I am going to get into it. Before I start, English isn't my first language, so I'm sorry for the grammatical errors and so on. I went to university back in 2020. I'm studying at a university that is not in my hometown. It's in another state. It took like a good couple hours to get there by flight from my hometown. And I'd say everything was pretty normal at first, being in a completely different state. I'd say I did a pretty good job at finding new friends, adapting to the surroundings, even though I went there alone. But I went there on my first semester. I don't know if that's the same for other countries, but since the pandemic had happened, students are able to choose whether you want to come to the uni and stay there, or just do uni from home, like virtual classes. So I took my first semester at uni, and then I did my second semester from home. So I stayed there from 3 to 4 months, probably September till January. So my story started in November. I joined one of the clubs at uni, and I actually wasn't really sure whether or not to post this because I'm still not sure of what really happened. It wasn't like he was straight up stalking me or being a creep, abusing me or whatever. But at some point, I did feel like I was being stalked, being controlled, and throughout the relationship, never have I ever felt comfortable at all, not even once. I've never told anyone about this, not even my family, because I was so scared that it might have just been me who was overreacting. So in November, I joined this club at my uni. It went very well at first. I made so many friends, and they were all so friendly. Some of them are still very close to me today. And so there was this guy, let's call him Jay. I met him and we became really close. I could say he was one of the most closest to me out of all of them at the time. Jay really stood out amongst them all. He was very friendly, charismatic, outgoing. There was nothing really about him that made people feel uncomfortable or dislike him. Even when we met outside club activities, like in the hallway between our classes, he'd make his way over to see me even though his classes were really far away from me. But if he saw me, he'd run and say hi, even if it was just for a second. So we became friends for almost a month, and one day we decided to go out to town with our friends. We were just hanging out and having fun. Nothing bizarre really happened on that trip, except Jay was acting extremely close that day, and it was kind of making me feel uncomfortable. He'd follow me every time, cling to me, and he was being too nice, which was not what he usually did. He was nice, but it was very different that time. We were playing bowling that day, and I was wearing this really long skirt, and he went and brought me the bowling shoes, and he decided to put them on for me. I didn't really think much about it, because he was always really nice, but when he lifted up my skirt and put the shoes on, he was kind of rubbing my calves, which caught me off guard, and I looked at him, and he just said, "Gotta make sure you wear the socks properly," which I think was weird, because I don't see why you've got to rub your calves to make sure your socks are worn properly. But no one saw that, because they were on the other side, so it was just both of us, and at the time, I really didn't know what to do, but I remember feeling so uncomfortable. But after that, we carried on playing bowling, and I kind of just forgot about it, and then we went on to lunch, all of us together. He was sitting next to me, and while we were waiting for the food, he had his arm on top of my chair, touching my shoulder. I don't know if it was just me, but I believe some of the girls out there feel that this is very uncomfortable, but again, I don't know how to point it out because everyone likes him, and no one was saying anything. I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting, so I just let it be. And yes, I did say we were close, but not in the kind of close friends way where you share everything. But anyway, Jay was very close to me, and we were just having small talks, random talks, never really a conversation that I'd have with my close friends, so I was still a little bit uncomfortable around him. Then after eating, we stayed for a few minutes just talking, and I was drinking from my glass when he grabbed my glass and drank from it. What made it weird was he took a look at the glass to see which part I put my mouth on and proceeded to drink from that exact part. I don't know if my friends saw that, but they didn't seem to notice his actions. See, in my country, it's extremely odd for you to drink from the same glass unless you're extremely close. And the fact that he took a second to see which part I'd put my mouth on just made it even weirder. But again, I just let it be because I didn't want to make the situation awkward. So anyway, around 8 PM, we went back to the unit and he dropped us all off at our dorm. I was the last one to be dropped off because my block was the furthest. I was already quite uncomfortable, so I just stayed silent during the drive before I realised he wasn't driving to my block. So I asked him, "Where are we going?" Instead of telling me where, he just told me to go to sleep and he'll wake me up later. And of course I wasn't having any of it. And he finally told me that he wanted to buy something from the grocery store. I don't know why my dumbass just stayed silent after that, but we eventually arrived at the store and he bought us drinks. He told me to go outside first and have a drink, and later he'll send me off. So by this time, it was almost 9:30 PM, and during the pandemic, not many stores were open at night, so it was really dark and there were not many people around. So I told him, let's just drink in the car while driving back to the dorm because it was late, but he said it was fine. I was really scared at this time, so I kept on telling him to drink in the car and go home. But then he said something that really creeped me out. He said, "Why are you so scared? No one's here." He said it so casually, and I was on the verge of crying at this time, but I didn't want to show him that. But luckily my roommate called me and asked me where the heck I was, and because of that, he then sent me back to my dorm. I arrived at my dorm, my roommate straight up asked me why I was back so late when my other friends that we were hanging out with were already back around 8. So I told her I was with Jay and her reaction was like, "If it's Jay, then it's fine." I was at first planning to tell her what had happened, but seeing how much people trusted him, I hesitated and decided not to tell her. But after that day, Jay started calling me every single day, texting me every single day, always asking me to go to lunch together. Even if I declined politely, I would tell him that I was going to have my lunch with my friends because I didn't want to seem that I literally wanted to avoid him as much as possible. So I just thought if I slowly avoided him, he'd stop. But he went behind my back and asked my friends if he could have lunch together with us, and my friends had no idea what was happening, so they agreed to it. And on the night time, he'd always call me, and I'd pick up because I thought, why would someone call me at like 12 unless it was super important? So I would always pick up his call, and it would never be anything important. Every time I tried to hang up, I don't know how, but somehow he'd always made me feel guilty. Like he would say stuff like, "Yeah, I know I'm not that fun to talk to," or "So you too, just like other people, don't like spending time with me," or "I call my parents and they always ignore me, I thought you wouldn't." He always told me how his parents didn't spend time with him every time I tried to hang up, so I always felt really bad, and even when I say I'm sleepy, he'd say, "Then just leave the call on, let's sleep together." And I wasn't having it and just hung up. Days after, I didn't pick up his call, and he called my friends and added me to group calls. And in these group calls, he'd say stuff like, "You guys, someone hates me and doesn't want to talk to me," and my friends would just talk to him like usual. So I left the group calls because I was just getting so annoyed. And at this point, I told my friends not to bring him to lunch. I didn't like it, but the next day I went to the cafeteria for lunch, and I saw my friends with him. So I tried not to be mad and asked why did they let him sit with us, and my friends told me that he'd said he'd buy all of us food for a whole week. At this point, my friends didn't think that he was being weird. Instead, they thought he was actually just really romantic and willing to do anything just to be with me. And they even said I hit the jackpot. So in October, we had another one of our club activities, and unfortunately, he had told the teacher at first, without me knowing, if there's any activities requiring us to be paired or grouped, he wanted to be with me, and sure enough, the activity required us to be paired. It was just one day, but I remember feeling extremely uncomfortable because I don't know how to explain this, but he'd just stare at me with the most intimidating eyes ever. He wasn't even blinking. Well, of course he blinked, he's human, but you get what I'm saying. I don't know how to explain it, but I was really scared. I still totally get that this was the first time in my life I felt really creeped out by someone's stare, but after that day, I quit the club because I really didn't want to see him anymore. So the next day, he called me, and I didn't pick up. He called me like 15 times, but I still didn't pick up. Then he called my friends, 6 of my close friends, all asking for my roommate's number. As I said, they really trusted him, so they just gave it him without thinking much about it. He called my roommate and asked where I was, and my roommate started to get alarmed by this because why would he go out of the way asking where I am when he could have just asked me, unless I was the one avoiding him. So after this incident, my roommate asked me why I was avoiding him, and I told her he made me feel very, very uncomfortable, but she just said, "You know, it's really hard finding guys like him that would go out of their way for someone they love." Days passed, he still kept on calling me, and occasionally I would pick up because I didn't want him to call my friends, because my friends would tell me that Jay kept on calling them, asking about me, but one night he asked me if I'd be in a relationship with him. But before asking me that, he was telling me about how he'd never been loved by someone, by his parents, partners, etc. He told me his parents were abusive and took advantage of him because he was really smart. His parents would act like they love him in front of people, bragging about his academic achievements, but they actually were really abusive. He also told me how his previous girlfriends would always take advantage of his wealth too, and he wanted to be loved by someone so badly. And I started to feel bad, so I said, "It's okay, you'll meet someone that will truly love you someday." He then asked me to be his girlfriend. At first I wanted to say no, but then he kept on telling me these horrible experiences and how he needed a partner to share this with. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. Maybe he did what he did because of what happened to him. So we started dating, but I told him not to tell anyone, because I'm the type of person that doesn't like to tell people about my relationships. I don't post it on my social medias either. If they know, they know. And we ended up getting into a huge argument because of this. He accused me of playing him around, having multiple boyfriends, and that's why I didn't want to post our picture on social media, because I was afraid that my other boyfriends would see this, according to him. Somehow I was able to explain to him why, and he agreed, but he then later posted our picture on his social media, and of course I got mad, because I didn't know what to do, so I just let it be. One day, when I was at the university office, I bumped into one of my guy friends, so we had a chat and took a selfie together, and I posted it on my story. Later that night, Jay called me, and everything just went normal, but the day after, I saw my guy friend that bumped into me with a bruise on his lip, and you could tell that it was from a fight. So I asked him about it. He told me that Jay did it, but not to tell him that I'd told me. I was so mad, so I went to see Jay and confronted him about it, but he was just like, "So, you're defending him?" I was so heated, and in the end, he just said that he'd never do anything unless someone provoked him. So after that, we just kind of forgot about it. But one day we met up in a cafe, and during the meeting, he suddenly asked for my phone and my social media passwords, and I was so surprised, so we argued about that as well. He kept on asking me to, but I didn't want to, and people started to look at us, so I told him I'd only give him my phone passcode, but not my social media, because I thought, well, later on I'll just change my phone's passcode. So I gave it to him. He opened my phone and started deleting all my contacts, including my family's, but only left his, but I didn't realise until I went back to the dorm. So later that night I asked him why he deleted all my contacts, and he just simply replied, "Well, you have me, you don't need them, right?" Jay was really, really weird throughout the relationship. I don't know if this is weird, but for me, it is. Every time we were on late night calls, he'd always tell me to tell him that he was great and he was incredible, I can't live without him, etc, etc. Every single night. He would get mad if I didn't. He'd also tell me that he'd bumped into a girl and obviously I just listened. What would he expect me to do, right? What's the big deal of bumping into someone? But he would get mad if I didn't get jealous, so I would usually pretend to be jealous. So stupid. So one day, I was out with my roommate and we saw him with his friends, and because I didn't want to see him, I quickly changed my route and he saw me do it. But later on, my roommate and I were in the mall because we'd just finished finals, and I ended up bumping into him. I didn't say anything and just smiled. He grabbed my arms and said with the scariest look ever, "Hey, we met. Strange, right? Didn't you avoid me just now?" I was really terrified. I really don't know how to explain his stares, but I'd never met someone that stares like that. It was so scary. I don't know how to explain it. Like, he stared straight into my soul. Like, if a stare could kill, I honestly think I'd be dead. So he asked me that and I lied. I said I didn't see him, but he didn't let me go. His grip was so strong. But finally, he did let me go when his friends came, and his eyes that were dead staring at me before were suddenly gone. He smiled and pet my hair, and then he went with his friends. Later on that night, I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided to end it. We hadn't been together that long, it was only like a month, so I just texted him. I told him that I don't feel like we were compatible with each other, and let's just end it. We were young anyway, but right after that he called me. I didn't pick up, so he texted me saying, okay, your loss. I didn't think that much about it because I just wanted it all to end, and I thought to myself, finally, I'm free. The next day, there were I believe to be maybe 10 to 15 fake accounts following me on Instagram. I thought it was really weird because they all followed me at the same time. I started to get alarmed by this, and a few weeks later I logged into my private account on Instagram. On Instagram, there's a feature where you can have a group of close friends on there, and you can post stories and only certain people in this group can see it. And when I looked, I'd seen that on my main account, as my private account was part of this close friends group on there, I'd see that apparently I'd posted something when I knew I hadn't. So I looked at it, and it was a text saying, let's see if you can do anything without me. I started to panic, and I asked my friends if they could check the close friends story that I'd apparently posted to see if they could see it. But they couldn't. So immediately I thought it was meant to be seen by only me, and I told all my friends to block that account. And I remember feeling very scared that he might do something bad or post something, but luckily he didn't. And after that instant, I thought nothing was going to happen, and since I blocked him there and never really checked that account back, I think he stopped, seeing that I didn't really care. But unfortunately, I forgot to block him on my Snapchat. So one day I posted a picture of me and my boyfriend. He's from another country, but in the photo, my boyfriend was actually blurred out because I don't like to post anything about my boyfriend on my social media like I said. But soon after, I saw his Snapchat story and I was like, shoot, I completely forgot to block him. And it was a screenshot of App Store. It seemed like he was trying to install an app to remove censored pictures. And immediately I remembered about my story and deleted it right away. He then posted, she pussied out. After that, I blocked him on all platforms because I was hoping not to have anything to do with him anymore. But he kept on texting me using fake accounts or messaging me on fake Instagram accounts, getting new numbers to text me until I couldn't take it, and I had to change my number and delete all my social media. And it actually helped because he stopped texting me. But I don't know why, somehow we kept on bumping into each other everywhere we went, and he acted like nothing happened. He'd just smile and asked how I was doing with that stare. I was living in fear throughout that semester because of that, and I decided to continue my next semester from home, so I'd feel safer. I was actually very nervous to share this because I don't know if it's just me overreacting, because basically he didn't directly stalk me or abuse me or harass me or whatever, but I did feel scared to even open my phone because I'm scared he'd do something. Even until now, I still feel like I'm being watched. So, was he really being a creep? Or is it just me? But to the creepy psycho guy at my university, let's never meet again. And that is the end of that one. Oh my god, that is red flags everywhere. You have every right to be scared. I don't like you being scared, but yeah, this would freak me out so much. He's definitely someone you need to stay away from, in my opinion. You did the right thing changing your number. I would make sure you tell someone, because I'm pretty sure at the start you said you haven't told anyone. You need to tell someone who, not a higher authority figure, but maybe a parent or a friend or someone that you can trust that you could potentially involve in the situation, because it's your safety at the end of the day, especially if he's still in your life. I would do my best to stay away from him, but you need to let someone know you are definitely not overreacting. That is terrifying. I definitely think you got out at a good time, because that would have just got worse, I think. But I'm very glad you're safe. But thank you so much for letting me read that out as well, because like I said, these let's not meet stories freak me out so much, and I'm so sorry that you've had to go through this. But if you guys have your own let's not meet story and you want me to read it out or react to it on the podcast, please drop your story over to me. You can do that the 3 ways I said at the start. So on the Facebook page, you can do it by email, or you can join the new subreddit. But that is everything for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to keep up with me in the meantime, you can head over to my Instagram. It's just at Alien Queen Meg, and you can keep up with me over there. But apart from that, I will catch you in my next one. Stay spooky, guys.